I've been attacked. Things kind of escalated, and he said he was going to teach me a lesson and come around the desk, and he was going to show me a thing or two if I didn't. And he started swearing, and I thought, this is it. And I started looking around for the button.
You have had problems with pedophiles in the library as well?
We've had some.
At first, Brody was a little difficult. All right, a lot difficult.
But you got better, did you? You may think it's the most boring place in the world, the public library. But guess again. Today, Don Borchert, author of Free for All, is here. You may be surprised to find out about the drug dealers, gangs, pedophiles, and homeless who hang out at today's public libraries. And later, children's author Dennis Komick. His books help give your kids a moral compass. First up, Don Borchert. Great to have you here today, Don.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this is not your father's public library.
In my father's, I have vivid memories of that. I used to go to the library with my folks as a kid, and you'd walk in, and there were ashtrays in those days, and the place was quiet and peaceful, and it seemed like nothing ever happened. So they've changed.
They've changed.
It's changed a bit.
And one reason I wanted to have you on the show, you know, I must say I've been going to the public library quite a bit lately myself in Santa Monica and Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I hate to say it because, you know, it's a big problem, but honestly, when I go in the public library in Santa Monica, often I feel that it's half homeless people and half students and maybe more homeless or crazy people. And it's a big problem. I don't mean to diminish or make fun of homeless people, but you go in there to get something done, and they're like people living there. I go in the bathroom, they're washing, shaving, cleaning, you know.
Right. Well, that's the curse of the public library, because we go out of our way to be inviting. There's no membership fee. There's no. I mean, we would go out and give out free bags of popcorn to bring people in. So
and they come.
And sure enough, they'll come. And so as a result, you get a broad spectrum. You get everybody that you want, and then everybody else will come in.
Now, is that good or bad? As I say, from some patrons' point of view at least, you know, if you go in and there are a lot of homeless or people talking to themselves or yelling or screaming, that's kind of uncomfortable. What do you think as the librarian, having observed this?
That's one of the reasons I called it Free for All, because that's one of the two meanings of the book. But the library is supposed to be inviting. It's in my system. We even have we put together a series of procedures where if you're homeless, we can get you a library card, and that's a library card with no driver's license, no fixed address, no phone number. We will just give you books, and so it's a resource for everyone.
Now, again, so I mean, it's great that you're obviously, you know, you actually are welcoming homeless in the library. Do you have problems because of it?
I work in a branch library in a fairly affluent community, and so we have a little bit of everything. As I mentioned in the book, we've had homeless, we've had pedophiles, we've had drug deals gone sour.
And we'll come to that.
And my daughter, who works who is a real librarian, I'm a pretend librarian. She works in a large LA metropolitan library and ringed with homeless shelters, and it's a constant thing that they have to be girded for and be ready for, because they come in every day.
Well, I will say your book gave me a little more insight, or maybe into the humanity of it, because you talk about the one librarian who actually knows. In other words, as I say, you see kind of the crazy people who are sitting around talking to themselves, or maybe you know, which is even more uncomfortable. But you talk about the librarian who kind of knew the guy, or like he would yell and go crazy if the little kids came up to him. But he was actually a regular, and
that man still comes in the library. I've worked for the library, say, around 15 years. He was there when I got the job, and just about 3 weeks ago, we thought there was a fight in the biographies, and one of the librarians went over there, and he was getting into an argument with a shelf.
Oh, no.
So, and usually when that happens, at one point he realizes, I better go outside and walk around a bit, and then he did.
Now, how often do you have to call the police?
We don't call them. We call the police regularly, but infrequently. I mean, they're used to getting our phone calls, but we're reticent to call them up too much because a lot of times I'm sure they get the feeling, oh, the librarians are calling because somebody's talking in an outside voice.
Right. You kind of talk about the politics of it, or
but we had one meeting with one of the community-based officers, and they told us, they said, in this situation, in this way, there are a variety of situations. Call the police. You don't. Nothing even has to happen. You just have a feeling that something might. And as a matter of fact, there's a book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, and his idea was that you will get a snap judgment about person in the fourth of a second, and the hair on the back of your neck will raise, and the police.
Is the hair on the back of your neck standing up right now?
Only because of the weather. But he said, don't neglect these feelings. If act on them. And so we've had people in the library, and they'll be reading a book, and somebody walks past and go, "Oh, watch that guy." And we do, and more often than not, it's a good thing to watch certain people.
So what's this is TV, what can I say? What are the worst case scenarios, which is one reason you wrote the book? The drug dealers is something. What's the worst thing that you've seen?
Some of the grizz, well, I've been attacked. I was at the main branch, and a man came in and checked out 8 books, and he said, now he wanted me to put them in order from largest to small. And I thought, well, we don't do that. And then he wanted the checkout slip on the 3rd book down a fourth inch in. And I said, you're checked out, you're free to go. And then things kind of escalated, and he said he was going to teach me a lesson and come around the desk, and he was going to show me a thing or two if I didn't. And he started swearing, and I thought, this is it. And I started looking around for the button.
The panic button.
And we do have a button.
Oh, there is a button.
But
you're like the bank. You got the button.
Except that sometimes it buzzes in a room where there's nobody there.
Oh.
And so I was just pressing it pretty frequently. And the security guard came just as he was coming around to teach me a lesson. But by that time, I was in such a state that I was ready to be. I said, "Let's go outside," And they said, "No, Don, you're a librarian."
And you kind of talk about that because you can't. Well, first of all, I should say people want to know what happened. They took the guy away, or he can't come back, or
they gave him a sound. This is another thing. They gave him a sound talking to, and said, "You're not allowed to assault library staff." And
good to clarify that.
Good to clarify. And then please come back.
Please come back.
And
does he?
And he does.
And he does.
And he's somewhat chastised. But in the weeks after that incident, things grew. Rumors grew, like Don kicked that guy's ass. And so people came up and congratulated me. They said, "Oh, everybody in this library's had problems with him. Congratulations." And
so you're a legend now.
I'm a legend. Even though I said I didn't hit him, but I don't tell him that.
Well, and you kind of talk about that too. You say that there are kind of limits on what you can and can't do. For instance, if they're standing there yelling and screaming, you're not supposed to yell and scream back?
We can't yell and scream back. We have to go to our last resort, which is being officious.
Oh.
And we just say, "Please, sir," and while somebody else is either calling the police or hitting the button. So, and the only thing we will do is, which something we learned from the police, is we put something between them and us, either a shelf or a counter or something, and then we And
what about that big book? Did you hit him with the big book? Because you mentioned the big book.
We have a big book, and we have other things beneath the counter. But they have access to the same books we do, so I'm not sure how much it would work.
I think you said at one branch they had a baseball bat behind the counter.
I think it wasn't in our branch; it was in a different system. But the woman came from it was an area where there was lots of things happening, and they had a baseball bat behind the counter at least to make them feel good.
Tough library.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. And we're back with Don Borchert, author of Free for All, today talking about some of the crazy things that happen in the public libraries. Well, drug dealers. You've had drug dealers and drug deals going down in the library?
We were the last to know. There were 2 young men who were, we just thought they were homeless guys that were trying to get a leg up and read some magazines, but they would come in the morning and get a phone call from the public phone, and leave some drugs in the trash can outside, and then go to our public restroom where they hid the drugs in the air conditioning vent.
Wow.
And that went on for, say, 3 or 4 months. And then one day the police came in. I don't know how the police knew. We didn't. But
so they were under surveillance or something?
Something, yeah. They knew about them. And they took them outside and arrested them and said, you can never come back here again.
And I think you said that, I mean, what, technically they could come back if they wanted to, but the police kind of...
Yeah, we try to be welcoming, and the police are not as welcome as we
so
are.
They'll figure out a way to...
Yeah, so they said, figure it out. Listen to us or listen to the librarians.
Gotcha. Well, I have to tell you, this is maybe at the other end of the scale, but my own pet peeve, I think. I would say I support capital punishment for people who talk on cell phones during the movie and in the library. Because a lot of people are talking on cell phones in the library. Do you notice that these days?
The thing that scares us even more than that is I guess is it called Bluetooth? The thing in your ear? And because we'll see people they'll be in the biographies and they'll say, I'm going to bring home some milk today and maybe some, well, I don't know. And you think, are they on the phone or are they crazy?
You think it's another crazy person?
And then you have to lean over and make sure that they've got something in their ear.
And and you never know, probably half of them are crazy and half of them actually are on the Bluetooth.
It's just a little cardboard thing, yeah.
And I'm trying to think, and the other thing is, now I'm sure that you get a lot of complaints from the public or hear, like I say, the people mouthing off. But my own pet peeve, though, I guess from the patron's point of view, is I use the Wi-Fi a lot. And so when I take my laptop in, I'll use it like at Coffee Bean or something, or all the, it's a Mac. You just turn it on and it works. And I use it at the library a lot. But one day I'll go in and it's not working, and I report it, and they'll look at me and say, "I'm sorry, this is the Beverly Hills Library. They'll love me over there." They actually said to me, they said, "You're the first person who reported it." And I said, "Oh yeah, well I probably am, but it's down, Yeah. I was trying to be a little bit nicer than that about it, but then even then, so I finally said, well, could you call your IT department and report it, or they claimed that anyway. But it's very hard. Actually, that's even have at the Apple Store, but it's very hard to report when the Wi-Fi is down. Nobody knows what to do. Yeah. So if I called and told you, walked in and told you the Wi-Fi was down, would you look into it?
No, no.
Oh
No, we have an IT group that comes and regularly gives us viruses and things.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's also one of the curses of the public library is technologically, we're not as adept as the population at large. For example, I know about the computer, but I didn't really have a computer or know about it until I began working at the library. And it was only about a year before that we had card catalogs.
Well, speaking of which, the technology, of course, the internet. The internet's wide open in the library, apparently, right? So that means patrons are looking at anything and everything?
And not only do they look at anything and everything, librarians, although we look mousy and kind of, you wouldn't want to have us over for Sunday dinner, they have some steel in their veins, and they're very pro-free speech, which means that when you sit at a computer, internet, we don't filter it.
No.
We don't filter.
So
it
even
at
if
all.
Somebody's sitting there watching porn in the middle of the library,
there's a wrinkle. If there's an adult looking at porn in the library, we will think that person is foul and should go somewhere, but we won't do anything. But if that person is sitting next to a 7th grader and says, "Ooh, look at this," then we call the police and have them arrested for distributing pornography.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not completely wide open then. And you've had cases where there was apparently someone, as we were talking about pedophiles, who apparently was, because, well, you say that parents tend to, the other thing that people may not know is people drop their kids at the library a lot, and there was some guy in there hanging out looking for little kids or something?
We have, the story that springs to mind is we're free daycare. So some of the kids, school gets out at 3:15. We're across the street from a junior high, and we're about a block away from a elementary school. So the majority of the kids will get picked up at 6, which is 3 hours. And we've had instances where at 8 o'clock at night, we'll have 3rd graders. So 3, 4, 5, they've been in the library for 5 hours.
Wow.
And they haven't eaten since noon. And we don't have a lot of kind spirits and friendliness to the parents when they come and pick them up.
And do you ever call the city and report? I mean,
At 8, the library closes at 8 o'clock, and by 8:10, if I'm in charge, I call the police.
Wow. But you have had problems with pedophiles in the library as well?
We've had some people have exposed this has happened several times where a person will expose themselves, and the person who has been exposed to freezes and will let us know about a half hour later.
Oh, well.
And so there's not much we can do.
Well, I think of something that happened in the Beverly Hills Library, which is right next to the police station. It's really not a good place to mess around because it's like literally right next to the police station. And one day, I remember I was in there and I heard somebody start screaming like, "He attacked me!" But honestly, it sounded like a crazy person talking or like yelling out. And the police were there in a few seconds, and kind of I saw them take him out of the building or something. But anyway, but I thought like everybody was ready to get under the table, I think, because you're waiting for the gun to pull out or something. You don't know what's going on. But but I guess the other thing, well, just having, well, the title. You want to tell us how the title came about? I know
the title right now is Free for All, and that came to me. My daughter suggested that. She said we were having problems. It turned out that writing the book is easy, coming up with the title is hard. But she said you should call it Free for All because there's two completely different meanings. One is it's a free institute. It's open and welcoming for anybody that walks in the door. We would have sofas, except that people would live there. And the other,
and they would.
And part two of that is that free for all is what our library is every afternoon at 3:30. It's a hockey game.
It is free for all.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, I hope I'm not blowing the lid off the secret here, but it sounds like you don't enforce fines very rigorously.
I like to. The library was not set up as a money-making thing. So we don't really dun people the way I would like to. But
because I always thought, like if I got a 50-cent fine or something, I thought they were going to turn me over to collection or something was going to go on.
You haven't been in my life. But if you were to come in the library and you're a regular and we recognize you and you've got $18 in fines, and in this economy, any one of us would go, give us $3 and we'll waive the rest. Try not to do it again, because it's tough to spend. I mean, it's tough to have all of your discretionary income just go to the library. But if you've been in an accident and can't make it, if you have $50 in fines and are really sorry, we will cut a deal.
All right, well, I'll cut you a deal. Thank you very much, Don Borchert. The book is Free for All. We'll be right back with Dennis Komick, children's author. And we are back. Joining me now is Dennis Komick, author of Brody and the Yeti children's book series. Great to have you here today, Dennis.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
And we've got, who is this?
That's Brody.
This is Brody, okay.
Yep. And this is the Yeti.
This is the Yeti.
Yep.
Okay, and they've got their own books.
Yeah, I decided to write some children's books after having a bad back injury, and I figured it was time to give back to someone that needed help, and little dogs need help, and I wrote the books for children because children can use a little bit of help too.
A little bit of help. Okay, now we said these books are going to help set their moral compass. Is that right? What are we teaching these kids? What are the dogs teaching?
Yeah, the first book is about the adoption of the Yeti, and it basically incorporates adoption, acceptance, sharing, and friendship. And it's a story about Brody having to learn to accept his new brother Yeti and learn to love him and share his life and his family with him.
And I should say that you're actually adopted yourself.
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 3 adopted children. I actually live down at the beach in South Bay, in Manhattan Beach, and my brother and sister and I were all adopted in the 70s. And I actually just recently got in contact with the adoption agency that I originally got adopted from, and we're going to start working together and doing special stuff for other kids that are being adopted.
Oh, now have you found your real your biological parents?
Yeah, I actually never did. I haven't gotten that far. The parents that adopted me, I'm really comfortable with, and I'm happy. And it'd be nice to find out exactly why I look like what I look like. But I think that I was given up from the information I have is they were very young, and they couldn't take care of me, and graciously enough gave me up for an adoption. Yeah.
Well, in some ways, they, honestly, probably more people should do that in a way, because when people who have kids aren't capable of handling them.
Absolutely.
But so I guess what I'm saying is, though, you drew on your own experiences then in these books?
Yeah, really. The stories are true, and it really was brought to my attention after I finished the first book that it really was an adopted child speaking out about themselves. And it wasn't really an intentional thing. It really happened that way.
So, and what words of wisdom then do you share with, how do the dogs learn to accept?
I think it's a time thing. Any child that learns to accept or love a new brother or sister or sibling, it just takes time. And for Brody, it was a really hard experience at first. He didn't want to really let him hang out on the couch. He didn't want him touching his toys.
Yeah, because I should say, I mean, pets can be as, I don't want to say vicious, but as vicious as little kids could be. I mean, little kids may not be happy about a new, not even adopted, but just a new biological sister and brother.
Absolutely.
But pets the same way. Dogs or cats may not be very happy that you brought home.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's actually a page that says, at first Brody was a little difficult. All right, a lot difficult.
But you got better, did you? All right, now, but you got a whole series of these planned, though, right?
Yeah, I have the first 2 books are out now. The first book is about the adoption of Yeti, and the second book is called The Yeti Saves Coco Bunny, and it's actually a true story about Yeti saving a rabbit named Coco from a rainstorm. My mom has always had a rabbit in her backyard, and Yeti bonded with him right away, and whenever I go over there to check on my mom, we happened to go one night, it was raining, and I make him go out in the backyard, and he didn't come back in, and I had to go out after him. He was crying and howling, and by the time I chased him into the corner of the yard and he wouldn't let me catch him, I realized he was putting his nose in something, and it turned out it was Coco Bunny. He had gotten stuck out of his cage and was lethargic and cold and wet, and we wrapped him up, took him upstairs, and my mom had him on her stomach there, and Yeti jumped up on the chair and had his head on his back, and just, it was amazing.
The dog is a hero.
The dog was a hero and bonded with the rabbit, and ever since then, when we go over there, the dog will chase the rabbits, and the rabbit will chase the dogs, and vice versa, and they're best friends.
So they've learned to accept that, that's for sure.
That's really cute.
And now I was wondering, children's books, of course, are big on, the artwork and the pictures. I mean, how did you draw all this too yourself?
Actually, the only thing I didn't do was the illustrations for the book. I found a gentleman named Michael Graham. He lives in North Carolina. Phenomenal illustrator. He did everything as far as illustrations concerned. I self-published the books. I wrote the books. I had them edited. And luckily I have a good friend who's in the toy industry, and I already have toy samples, toy samples ready.
So they're going to be little Brody and Yeti doggies, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. They've been requested already, and people don't know that they exist yet. But they're production ready, so I'm excited to go to that adventure next.
Well, there's a whole merchandising concept here. But I should say too, though, that there's a philanthropic side to this, that you've been involved with some charities, or portion of this?
Yeah, a portion of all the proceeds from the books are going to go to animal rescue groups and animal shelters to help out other rescue dogs like Little Yeti. During that back injury I spoke about, I basically sat for 5 years injured with 2 dogs, and I really felt strongly that I should do something to give back to other animals, and at the same time, give something for children to learn morals by. And they use the dogs as metaphors to learn.
Well, and have you shown these to people yet? I mean, have they, are getting out there and circulating? And
yeah, I'm doing a grassroots effort in my local area. I've been at schools and libraries reading and showing them to children. I have a PR group doing a national campaign as we speak. And it's
because I just wondered what the response was, because it seemed like. Well, actually, you know what? I think you could get a Disney franchise out of this. I could see the Birdie and Yeti movies, and
that would be the ultimate goal, is to get them in animation, cartoons, or on the big screen. That's definitely was one of the intentions from the start. I figured the more I do with it, the more I can help other animals.
So I'm just curious, I think a lot of people, you essentially mentioned self-publishing, and I think a lot of people at least have the aspiration of being an author, and sometimes find it hard to follow through on it. But how easy or how hard is it to self-publish these days, or what was that experience like for you, especially with something with all of the illustrations?
Yeah, it's actually quite difficult. I didn't think it would be that hard at all, but it took over 2 years to get the first book in my hand. Doing everything from trademarking the characters and the names, the copywriting the stories, getting a good printer that you trust, and book in hand ready to sell, over 2 years. So it's I know why people don't do it every day. It's a lot more difficult than it seems, but the reward is amazing.
Well, and they look very professional. Oh, and I appreciate there's the doggy prints too, and I see you signed it. That's great. But it looks very professional, very slick. And but is it also very expensive to do something like this? Or
yeah, it's definitely a financial adventure. You have to really want it. I suggest anyone who wants to write a book to absolutely go ahead and do it. I think it's a phenomenal experience, and if you have something that's viable or a good story, it will sell. It really will.
Well, is there anything you can tell people also too about, since you mentioned the pet adoptions and stuff and that agency, anything that maybe if they're, because here in LA, I would say people are crazy about their dogs, and you hear a lot about their rescue organizations and things. And,
Absolutely. Well, Brody was purchased from a pet store, and he turned 9 on October 20th, and I would have loved to have adopted him, but at that point I wasn't looking at adoptions as an option. And when I decided to get Brody a brother and found Yeti through the adoption agencies, it just really showed me the light that there's so many adoptable animals out there, and a lot of people don't want to adopt because they don't want a dog that has issues or problems. Well, there's a lot of puppies.
So is that why most people, you're saying people give them away to the agency because they have issues or problems?
Right.
And then,
whether they are aggressive or they bite or they just don't listen, you have to really want to work with the animal. They're like little people if you work with them.
What's the procedure for adopting? Because I remember actually there was that thing when Ellen, I remember the nationwide controversy over the adoption where like she gave the dog away and it violated their policy and they came and got it or something.
Right.
I mean, is there a whole screening process and all kinds of rules and guidelines? And
yeah, they're
like
actually,
adopting a kid?
It's not quite that bad, but yeah, there's definitely a screening process where they come and they want to see your house and they want to see the yard and make sure that you really are adopting this animal for good intentions. It's interesting, when they brought Yeti, they brought him late at night and they never looked at the yard. I think maybe he was an issue at the adoption agency, so they were glad to give him to me and I was glad to take him.
Here, have him.
Right, it kind of felt like that.
Got in the car and ran really quick and drove off. Huh?
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis, for being here. And
Pleasure.
Brody and I want to call him Yentl. Yentl. Brody and Yenti, the true tales of two little dogs, and also the Yeti Saves Cocoa Bunny. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.